khutbah was also like, oh, I want you to marry my niece, and here's the merits of our tribe, blah, blah, blah. Of course, poetry was a big, then Saj'un Kuhana, like the soothsayers, they would speak in rhyme, and they would try to sound mysterious, and then tell you what the dead are telling you, like the spirits are spoken to me, and I speak about the leaves and the trees and the bees and blah, blah, blah. Like they'll do this kind of nonsense, right? So these were some of the genres that survived. And then, of course, Nathar, which is plain speech. Mm-hmm. So we have quite a bit of that. And from it, you can derive how the Arabs were engaging with their language and how the Qur'an was engaging with the existing language, right? So studying pre-Islamic literature becomes extremely, extremely important for that reason, because it gives you the answer to, were the Arabs used to hearing this thing figuratively or literally, right? And some people come on and say, there's nothing figurative in the Quran. Well, really, then find a straight road, because Allah says, guide us to a straight path. It starts with a figurative expression, right? There's lots of figurative. In fact, the Arabs, in some literaries would even say, al-Arabiyya kulluha majaz. Like, it's almost the entire language is figurative in some way or the other, right? But we don't go the Christian route of figurative speech. The Christian route of figurative speech is the Lord said there shall be rain, right? You know what that means? In your life, it's going to rain soon. Your paycheck's going to rain. What are you talking about, bro? You just took something from here and something from here, So this is not the kind of figurative analysis that genuine scholarship ever did. But did they say, hey, look, there's precedence for this in language, and this is why this makes more sense, and here's a suggestion for why this can be taken figuratively. Now, as a student of tafsir, I can tell you there are many cases in which the same ayah can be looked at literally and figuratively, and you can learn much from both dimensions.
How can Aqimus Salah be taken figuratively and not literally? Established prayer.
Aqimus Salah is literal, and it has figurative layers.
Okay.
So you can call them, if you want to understand the Balaghi terminology in simple speech, you can say there's the primary intent and there's secondary layers. So what's the secondary layer? The word Salah comes from Sila or Wasl, and Sila can mean two things. It can mean connection. So not only should you pray, but you should seek to maintain a relationship with God through the prayer. So now the substance of the prayer, the form of the prayer, has now been merged with the spirit of the prayer in one phrase. But the word sila also comes from sad lam waw, which actually sala yaslu means to put a thick wooden stick in the fire so that it gets softer, so you can straighten it. Right? So establish uprightness, as if Allah is saying you standing upright in prayer is you actually uprighting your character.
By stretching out.
By putting yourself through rigorous training,
okay.
like the stick is put in rigorous fire.
Okay.
Right? And what it does is it takes all the bark and all the weak elements of the wood, and it burns them off. That's why actually yaslawna jahannam in the Quran, the same verb is used for people being cast into Jahannam, right? Because they're cast in a fire. So you're literally shedding impurities through this exercise, and that's part of Aqimus Salah. There's another dimension now, since we're talking about that. What is Salah? What is the biggest part of Salah? Reciting Quran. When you're reciting the Quran, Allah is telling you, for example, give to the orphan, give to the poor, qulu qawlan sadida, speak straightforward, right? Don't be a cheat, qulu ma'a salihin, be with good people, etc., etc. And you're praying and you're like, oh, I just lied to my uncle. I just lied to my boss. And so what are you going to do? You're going to go and you're going to put yourself in the fire and actually tell the truth, because God just told you that, and you told God back, this is what I'm going to do. So you're straightening yourself out by praying. So these secondary meanings are profound. And to say, oh, well, no, it just means be spiritually connected to Allah. Like, let's deny the literal meaning. No, it's stupid to deny the literal meaning, but it's also an injustice to ignore the figurative beauty that came with it, right? So it's multidimensional. That's part of the beauty of the Quran.
Are there any verses of the Quran? I know some verses of the Quran were abrogated, but is there, from your understanding, are there any parts or aspects of the Quran which are inapplicable for certain times?
It's something I struggle with, and I'll be blunt about my opinion. I don't believe there is abrogation in the Quran.
You don't?
No, I do not believe that. I believe there's progression in the Quran, tadrij, but I don't believe there's nasakh in the Quran.
So can I ask you as an example? So there's a verse of the Quran. Please tell me, because I don't know exactly which surah, where Allah says, the Christians and the Sabians who believe in Allah on the final day, that they may attain Jannah.
Sure.
And then, do you know which verse I'm talking?
Yeah.
But then in the latter verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that you have to believe in Allah and the Messenger.
So this is, okay, I'll help you out with that one. Nothing wrong with that ayah. And I'll tell you why. Because context is everything in the Quran. Allah says, "Uhkimat ayatuhu." The ayat of the Quran are stitched to each other. They're stitched together. Now, if I have a piece of knit cloth or wool, and I pull one string out, then I'm violating its stitching.
Did I get the verses right?
You got the verse right, but you're joining one ayah from one stitching to another ayah from another stitching. So let's understand the stitching. The stitching is the Israelites. The Israelites are being told, believe in what has now come down to this prophet. And there's like, oh, so everybody before was wrong? Everybody was just going to Jahannam? Allah says, no, anybody who believed and did good. In fact, before the coming of this prophet, even among the Christians, among the Jews, whoever was doing right, none of their deeds are going to be taken away. It's actually commenting on something that we're making them say, well, does that mean we were all wrong all along? Right? It's in that vein the conversation's happening. It's not, we became accustomed in the digital age to search for a subject in the Quran and pull out an ayah and not look at how Allah actually placed that ayah inside of a context. Just like you and I talking now, you can take a sentence of what I say, make it into a short form clip.
I'm going to do that.
Inshallah. If not, there are plenty of people that are ready to. And they're going to do that. And what's going to happen is what I was saying will be completely misconstrued. Why? Because simply when you have 4 or 5 dots and you want to draw a line through them, you can only draw one line through them. But if you have one data point, one dot, you can draw an infinite number of lines through it, right? What do we do with an ayah a lot of times? We have this one data point and we start drawing a number of conclusions from it. Instead of saying, no, this ayah belongs inside of a context. And that's this is the first principle of understanding the Quran. First understand what surah, what passage, what overall discourse does this ayah belong to? What's its original place? I'll tell you, ignoring that it leads to the craziest things. I'll give you an example of that. Allah says, for instance, what example was I? Oh yeah, إِنَّمَا يَخْشَى اللَّهَ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ الْعُلَمَاء. The ones who truly fear Allah among His slaves are the ulama. Okay. I was talking to you about textual context. Let's, for a moment, look at historical context. If you were going to translate ulama into English, what would you say?
The most common is scholars.
Okay, scholars. The ayah is Makki. So it's revealed in Makkah. There are no scholars in Makkah. But they're Bedouin Arabs. And even the ones that became Muslim know some surahs here and there, right? And the only scholars that we're going to see in the seerah are going to be scholars of the Jews. They're called ulama.